Summary of Ordinary Men by Christopher Browning. Ordinary Men begins with a terrible statistic that Christopher R. Browning explains as follows. In March of 1942, around 80% of all of the victims of the Holocaust were still alive, while approximately 20% had already passed away. Nevertheless, just 11 months later, these figures would be reversed. The years 1942 to 1943 were some of the bloodiest, most violent, and most terrifying in World War II. This is mostly because of the violence in the big ghettos and death camps. But Browning became interested in the question early on of whether small towns and villages were just as likely to be bombed as big ghettos. In his search for information, Browning came across questioning records for Reserve Police Battalion 101, which is a part of the German Order Police. It was shocking how detailed the charges and interrogations were, especially because they showed how normal the guys who did the horrible acts of violence were. Browning used the stories of more than 125 police officers from Reserve Police Battalion 101, RPB 101, to write Ordinary Men in response to this. The men of RPB 101 get to Józef, Poland, on July 13, 1942, and gather around their leader, Major Wilhelm Trapp. They are told by Trapp that they are to find all the Jews in town, remove the men to send to work camps, and then kill the women and children. After telling them this, Trapp makes a very strange offer. Any older man who doesn't think they can carry out the killings can be let off the hook. Browning talks about the background of the Order Police in Germany before moving on with the story. The group has roots in the time between the wars, when it was formed as an armed force to deal with revolutionary groups. But the Treaty of Versailles said that Germany could not have an army of more than 100,000 people, so the group had to break up. As soon as Adolf Hitler became president and Heinrich Himmler became head of the police, Germany started getting new weapons and making new police departments. Hemst put Kurt Daluege in charge of the Order Police, which were like county police. Order Police numbers grew quickly when World War II started, and they were sent to Russia, Poland, and other places where they had just taken over new land. The Order Police were especially helpful in Poland, where Odilo Globoknik, who was in charge of the general government in German-occupied central Poland, didn't have enough people to carry out the final solution in his area. As part of the final solution, leaders used the Order Police to help with big acts against Jews, like sending them to death camps and ghettos in the east. Jews who tried to escape or even died of heat exhaustion on the trains often got hurt during these deportations. Reports from Order Police guards on these trains paint a bleak picture of Jews who were hungry and fighting to stay alive in harsh conditions for days before they got to their destinations, which were often death camps. When RPB 101 first came to Poland, this job and steps to help people find new homes made up most of their work. Major Trapp is an old party fighter who fought in World War I, but the Nazis don't think he's ready to join the SS, so they put him in charge of RPB 101. Every division is made up of 3 companies, and each company has 3 platoons. Julius Wolof is in charge of the 1st company, Lieutenant Nade is in charge of the 2nd company, and Wolfgang Hoffmann is in charge of the 3rd company. Lieutenant Hagen is Trapp's assistant. In early summer 1942, when the company gets to Belgorod, Poland, there aren't many people being killed in gas chambers at death camps like Sobibor and Treblinka. Globoknik, who wants to carry out the Nazis' final solution, gets angry with the lack of killing and tells RPB 101 to kill a lot of Jews in Józef. On July 13, Trapp and his men get together in Józef. Trapp is clearly upset about what he wants his men to do. Only one man, Otto Julius Schimke, steps forward right away when he says that any guy who doesn't want to take part in the killing can leave. Once they see Trapp protecting Schimke from Schimke's commander's anger, about 12 more follow his lead. The battalion gets to work right away gathering Jews, taking them to the market, choosing Jewish men for work camps, and getting firing teams ready. As soon as the first shooting teams are ready, a group of Jews is led into the forest, put with their killers, and killed. The second group comes in just as the first firing team leaves the bush to get more Jews. That day, this process goes on for 17 hours, or until all 1,500 Jews are killed. A lot of guys ask to be released from the violence throughout the day, which is always okay. For some reason, though, most people, about 80%, still choose to shoot all day. After the event, the men are down and don't want to talk about it when they get back to their camp. Browning says that the pressure to fit in with the group was a big reason why so many men in the company decided to shoot. They didn't want other men to think they were cowards. Also, a lot of them were probably men who agreed with the Nazis that Jews were Germany's enemies. Many of the men who didn't shoot after killing at least one person said they were physically sick, but Browning thinks there may have been deeper moral or political objections that they couldn't say. Soon after, though, when Nade leads his men in another mass killing with a group of Hilfswillige, Highwis, all of the men decide to shoot at least once. Browning says that one reason for this might be that Nade didn't make it clear that men who didn't want to shoot were okay, even though many men did choose to stop early on. One of the battalion's main jobs is to help gather Jews from towns and ghettos so they can be sent to nearby death camps. People who are sick or weak and have trouble walking are always to be killed during these roundups. Thousands of Jews are picked up at once. Sometimes there is a lot of violence, like at Miedzierzek, and other times there is a lot of order and peace, like on the second day of clearing the Parksu ghetto. The company does take part in more mass killings, such as one in Sarakomla and another killing of 78 Poles and 180 Jews as revenge for the death of one of their own soldiers on his way back to the base from work. Most of the men get used to the violence, but some don't, so they keep trying to avoid being put in firing squads. Lieutenant Bookman is one of the loudest people who don't like the violence, and he even works to be sent back to Germany so that he doesn't have to deal with it anymore. On top of that, Captain Hoffman gets a strange sickness that makes his stomach hurt and makes him act violently. At the time, he thought it was because of a bad dysentery treatment he got in 1942, but now he says it was because of the stress of all the deaths and violence going on around him. Hoffman is also taken out of his charge and sent somewhere else. They take part in a new part of the final solution in late fall 1942. They call it the Judenjagd, which means Jew hunt. So that their security area is truly Jewish-free, the men search the area's woods, houses, and barns for any Jews who are hiding and have not been sent away yet. They quickly kill any Jews they find. This goes on for months, well into the spring of 1943, and there is no way to know for sure how many Jews the men killed during this time. The last murderous act of the company happens in the fall of 1943, when they take part in the infamous Erntefest, or Harvest Festival. A lot of Jews were killed in the Judenjagd, and most of the ghettos were cleared out. Now, only a few Jews live in small ghettos and work camps in the battalion's district. Globoknik knows that these Jews need to be killed in order to make the area truly Jewish-free. To keep Jewish pushback to a minimum, the action has to happen all at once. After a long time of planning and getting ready, on November 3rd, Reserve Police Battalion 101 and a number of other groups move toward the Majdanek concentration camp, where about 18,000 Jews have been held for the Erntefest. They help watch over the road that leads into the inner camp, where Jews are shot and killed in mass pits that they dug themselves. At the Paniatoa prison camp the next day, the same thing takes place. After this, the Lublin district is declared free of Jews. Most of the company breaks up after this last killing, as men move to other units or even start their own. There are people who die in battle, like Hopner and Peters. Trapp, Bookman, and Kammer are tried and found guilty of killing Poles in revenge in 1942. Trapp is put to death, and Bookman and Kammer are given short jail terms. In the 1960s, 14 men from Reserve Police Battalion 101 are charged with helping to kill a lot of Jews, and 210 former members are questioned. Some people don't go to jail at all, and some are left out of the decision because their health is getting worse. Browning says that even though this may not seem like enough, it is one of the few cases against order police that went to trial and had a decision, so it was a win. Most of the men in Reserve Police Battalion 101 were middle-aged family men whose morals were set before Nazism became popular. Many of them weren't even willing to join the battalion, they were forced to, which means they didn't choose to be a part of the war. He then asks why so many of these men who seemed normal turned into mass killers during the war, especially since they could have chosen not to kill. In the end, this question doesn't have a single answer. One of the reasons was widespread racism and the ongoing war. Other reasons were the men's belief in German greatness based on widespread Nazi propaganda and their desire to fit in with the group, which they themselves admit. This does, however, mean some bad things. Because many of these elements are present in the lives of the vast majority of people on a day-to-day basis, this raises an essential question. If the guys in RPB 101 were changed into killers despite the fact that their environments were quite typical, are there many individuals who wouldn't be?
About the author. Browning was born in 1944 in Durham, North Carolina, but he grew up in Chicago. Browning got a BA in History from Oberlin College in 1967 and an MA in History from the UW-Madison years later. Before getting his PhD from the University of Wisconsin in 1975, Browning taught history at Allegheny College in Pennsylvania and St. John's Military Academy. He has written or helped write 10 books about the Holocaust and Hitler's final solution since 1978. Browning was a professor at Pacific Lutheran University for 25 years. He has also been a guest speaker or professor at Princeton University, Cambridge University, and other well-known schools. A lot of people have called Browning as an expert witness in cases of people accused of being Nazis in Australia, Canada, and the UK. Browning was made a Fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences in 2006. In 2006, his book Ordinary Men won the first of 3 National Jewish Book Awards he would win. He started working at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill in 1999. He became a visiting professor at the University of Washington in Seattle.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.